The Tharkali Empire had conquered 712 planets before setting their sights on Earth. They had defeated entire armadas, crushed planetary defenses, and enslaved species without breaking a sweat. And now, these mighty conquerors had chosen humanity as their next target. It was supposed to be easy. Their high strategist, Gordhak the Unyielding, had personally calculated that the invasion would take no more than 48 hours. His plan was foolproof. Step 1. Disable Earth's primitive defenses. Step 2. Send an elite ground force to subjugate their largest cities. Step 3. Demand immediate surrender. It had worked every time before. But then they landed. And everything fell apart instantly. The first red flag, Earth's defenses were weird. The Tharkali Armada descended from the void, their sleek warships blotting out the sky. Their sensors scanned the surface, searching for planetary defense cannons, shield generators, orbital weapons platforms. Nothing. Earth had no planetary shields. No orbital weapons. No anti-fleet defenses. The Tharkali officers were confused. Surely they must be hiding their defenses. Maybe underground. But no. Humanity had nothing. Just a bunch of tiny metal aircraft that couldn't even leave the atmosphere. This is going to be too easy, Gordhak muttered. But then the second red flag appeared. The human military's response was bizarre. The Tharkali broadcast their standard demand for surrender in every human language. People of Earth, your planet is now under the rule of the glorious Tharkali Empire. Surrender now and submit to our rule. And the humans did nothing. For 6 whole hours there was no response. No armies mobilizing. No emergency broadcasts. No mass evacuations. The Tharkali commanders grew nervous. Are they ignoring us? One of them asked. Gordhak sneered. Fools. They must be frozen in terror. Deploy the ground forces. We'll crush them personally. The first contact disaster. The first Tharkali troops landed in a small town called Wisconsin, expecting to overwhelm the local population. They were met with Jerry. Jerry was a 42-year-old gas station attendant wearing a bathrobe, a pair of Crocs, and holding a lukewarm cup of gas station coffee. He watched as towering alien warriors in advanced battle armor stomped out of their drop pods, weapons glowing ominously. He took a sip of his coffee. And then he said the 5 words that changed history. Y'all lost or something? The Tharkali hesitated. This was not the reaction they were expecting. Silence, primitive, bow before us. Their captain barked. Jerry just squinted at them. Listen fellas, I don't know what kind of cosplay convention y'all got going on, but you're blocking the gas pumps. This is not cosplay. We are conquerors. Jerry took another sip. Well, you're about to get conquered by Hank if you don't move. He's got a real short temper when it comes to gas prices. The Tharkali commander blinked. Who is this, Hank? And that's when they heard it. A distant rumbling. The sound of an ancient, rust-covered Ford F-150 barreling toward them at 90 miles per hour. Behind the wheel, Hank, who had just gotten off a 14-hour shift at the steel mill and was in no mood for alien nonsense. Move your tin can asses out of the way. Hank roared, honking furiously. The Tharkali barely had time to react before the F-150 plowed through their landing formation, sending armored soldiers flying in every direction. Gordhak watched the chaos unfold from orbit. What is happening? His officers had no answer. The domino effect of human stupidity. By the end of day 1, the Tharkali invasion forces had suffered catastrophic failures across every landing zone. In Florida, a group of aliens had mistakenly walked into an alligator farm and were never seen again. In Texas, a battalion tried to take over a ranch, only to get chased off by cowboys with shotguns riding ATVs. In New York, aliens landed in Times Square and got scammed out of their weapons by street hustlers selling fake Rolexes. And in Ohio, well, nobody knows what happened in Ohio. Not even the Tharkali. Their entire battalion disappeared. Everywhere the Tharkali landed, they were met not with fear, but with confusion, aggression, or sheer insanity. By hour 36, Gordhak realized something horrifying. Earth was not a normal planet, and humans were not a normal species. The final straw, the Independence Day disaster. Desperate to gain control, Gordhak decided to broadcast a final ultimatum. Using their most advanced technology, they hacked into every human screen and transmitted a massive hologram of himself. People of Earth, this is your final warning. Surrender now or face utter destruction. And what did the humans do? They cheered. Yo, this CGI is sick. One teenager shouted. When's the next Marvel movie dropping? Another yelled. Bro, they're doing a real-life Independence Day remake. Before Gordhack could clarify that this was not a movie, his entire transmission was cut off. Because someone had overwritten his broadcast. And on every screen on Earth, a new video appeared. A clip of Will Smith from the 1996 movie Independence Day. Welcome to Earth. And then, a human punched the Tharkali ambassador live on television. Gordhack's breakdown. Gordhack stood in silence. His mighty war machine, his unstoppable empire, was being humiliated by a species too stupid to be afraid. He turned to his officers. Have we conquered Earth? He asked weakly. The room was deathly silent. Then one officer coughed. Sir, we might actually be the ones getting conquered. Gordhack collapsed into his chair. I hate this planet. Gordhack sat in his command throne, head in his hands. It had been 48 hours since the invasion of Earth had begun. The Tharkali Empire had conquered 712 planets before this. They had defeated entire civilizations, crushed armies, and dominated entire systems with their advanced war machines. And now they were losing to a planet where a man named Jerry wore Crocs to war. It was time to retreat. But before the Tharkali fleet could begin their withdrawal, a new disaster unfolded. The accidental human counteroffensive. Somewhere in the heart of America, in a small farm town, a group of bored teenagers had discovered something strange in their backyard. One of the Tharkali drop pods had crashed into a cornfield, and instead of reporting it to authorities, the teenagers did what any responsible human would do. They poked it with a stick. Dude, this thing looks like one of those alien spaceships from Halo. What if we can fly it? Bro, let's see if it has Bluetooth. For reasons that defied all logic, the teenagers somehow figured out the controls. And within minutes, they accidentally launched themselves into space. Earth's secret military fleet, that wasn't secret at all. Meanwhile, back at Earth's only space station, a group of sleep-deprived NASA engineers were about to ruin the Tharkali Empire's day. NASA had exactly one functional combat spaceship, and it wasn't even designed for war. It was a prototype shuttle equipped with an experimental railgun, built purely as a test vehicle, nicknamed the Bald Eagle by the engineers. It had never been used. Until today. Because when the Tharkali fleet prepared to retreat, the US government got a strange idea. What if they launched the Bald Eagle at the aliens, just to see what happens? After all, what's the worst that could go wrong? The most unintended military victory in history. Inside the Tharkali flagship, Gordhack was ordering a retreat when the first human spaceship appeared on their scanners. His officers stared at it. Commander, there's a human ship approaching. Just one? Gordhack asked, confused. Yes, sir. Gordhack leaned forward. Are they attacking? No, sir. They seem to be. The officer hesitated. They seem to be spinning uncontrollably. Gordhack squinted. On the main screen, the Bald Eagle was tumbling through space like a drunk missile, completely out of control. Inside the ship, the NASA pilots were screaming. Who designed this thing? I told you we needed more stabilizers. Why is there a cup holder but no ejection system? But in the chaos of their flight, something terrifying happened. The experimental railgun activated. And because the ship was spinning wildly, the railgun fired in every direction at once. The battle that wasn't a battle. The entire Tharkali fleet was caught off guard. Massive hypervelocity projectiles tore through their capital ships, disabled engines and ripped apart command bridges. Gordhack's flagship barely dodged the attack, but his entire right flank was obliterated in seconds. The Tharkali warships exploded one by one, their shields useless against the sheer speed and force of the projectiles. Back at NASA, the engineers were horrified. Oh my God, we just started an intergalactic war. But to every human watching on Earth, it looked like the most epic space battle in history. Humanity's advanced war strategy, that wasn't a strategy at all. The entire world watched live as a single, malfunctioning human spacecraft wiped out half the Tharkali invasion fleet. People cheered. Conspiracy theorists lost their minds. News networks declared it a legendary victory. And in a bar somewhere, Jerry from the gas station watched the footage, sipped his beer and said, "Knew we had it handled." The Tharkali Council watches in horror. Meanwhile, on the Tharkali homeworld, the High Council of Generals was watching the live feed of the invasion. They had expected a glorious conquest. Instead, they were watching their forces being annihilated by accident. One of the generals rubbed his temples. Commander Gordhack, please explain to us what we are witnessing. Gordhack, still shaking from near death, did not have an answer. Another general leaned forward. Is it possible that we have underestimated humanity? A Tharkali scientist gulped. Sir, I think they don't even realize what they're doing. Silence. Then the Tharkali war minister spoke. Order a full retreat. Now, before they accidentally destroy us all. The most embarrassing galactic retreat ever. The Tharkali fleet turned and fled, leaving Earth behind. It was the first time in history that an empire had been forced into retreat by a planet that didn't even know it was at war. The Tharkali told no one what happened. They simply marked Earth as too dangerous to invade, and permanently blocked it from all galactic star maps. For centuries, whenever young Tharkali soldiers asked about Earth, they were told only one thing. Do not go there. You will die in the dumbest way possible. Final cliffhanger, but what if they come back? Years later, on a distant Tharkali warship, a young officer stared at an old classified file marked Earth. His commander noticed and grabbed his wrist immediately. You don't want to know. The young officer frowned. But why? Surely we could try again? The commander shook his head. Because if we go back, there's no telling what those lunatics will do next. Far away on Earth, Jerry poked a crashed alien drone with a stick. The Tharkali fleet limped back to their homeworld, their ships barely holding together after the worst military failure in galactic history. The Empire's greatest warriors, most advanced ships and high-ranking officers had been beaten, not in battle but by accident. By a gas station attendant, a truck-driving steel worker, a bunch of teenagers, and a spacecraft held together with duct tape. And worst of all? They couldn't let anyone find out. The High Council's emergency meeting. The moment Gorthak stepped onto the Tharkali homeworld, he was dragged straight into an emergency war council meeting. The entire High Council of Generals sat in stunned silence as Gorthak stood before them, covered in soot, his armor dented, his face completely drained of life. The war minister leaned forward. Commander Gorthak, please explain what in the name of the Tharkali gods just happened. Gorthak took a deep breath. Then he broke down sobbing. The cover-up begins. The High Council listened to every humiliating detail. Jerry, Hank, the alligator farm, the teenagers launching themselves into space, the malfunctioning NASA ship that single-handedly wiped out half the fleet. By the end, one of the generals had fainted. Another was drinking directly from a flask. The war minister buried his face in his hands. We cannot let the galaxy know this. The room fell silent. One of the generals frowned. But sir, we've suffered catastrophic losses. The Empire will demand an explanation. The war minister stood abruptly. Then we will lie. Gorthak blinked. Lie? The war minister began pacing. We cannot admit that an empire as mighty as ours was defeated by. He hesitated. What is the human term for this? An intelligence officer checked his translator. Rednecks and chaos gremlins, sir. The war minister turned pale. Yes, that. We cannot admit this. And so, the greatest cover-up in galactic history began. The fake war report. The High Council drafted an official report for the Tharkali Empire, explaining that the war against Earth had been a strategic retreat due to unforeseen cosmic interference. The report claimed, heavy checkmark the human homeworld was unstable and on the verge of self-destruction. Heavy checkmark the humans had mysterious, unpredictable technology that made battle too dangerous. Heavy checkmark the entire planet was a cursed death world. Gorthak, who had PTSD from his encounter with Hank's F-150, enthusiastically agreed. Yes. Humans are unpredictable and chaotic. One of them fought our warriors in a robe and Crocs. Another rode a metal beast into battle. It's suicide to go back. The Galactic Senate reacts. When the report was presented to the Greater Galactic Senate, the reaction was shock and horror. A Valari ambassador leaned forward. Wait, you're saying Earth is a death world? The Tharkali representative nodded solemnly. The worst we've ever encountered. A reptilian senator hissed. And humans? What are they like? Gorthak, who had seen Florida Man in action, shuddered. They are madness incarnate. The room fell into terrified silence. From that moment forward, Earth was permanently blacklisted. Trade routes were redirected. Explorers were warned never to approach. Any mention of Earth in Tharkali records was classified as top secret, do not engage. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Jerry was grilling burgers in his backyard, completely unaware that he had been declared one of the most dangerous beings in the universe. At the same time, NASA scientists were popping champagne bottles after the Bald Eagle's successful first combat test. Teenagers in Ohio were still missing in space. And in a classified government facility, a group of officials stared at a strange message intercepted from deep space. A simple transmission repeating over and over. Do not return to Earth. Too dangerous. Too unpredictable. The scientists exchanged confused looks. Guess we scared him off. And then they went back to watching cat videos. The galactic rumors begin. As years passed, the legend of Earth spread across the stars. Some species believed humans were hyper-intelligent warlords, secretly ruling the planet with an iron fist. Others thought Earth had eldritch horrors buried beneath its surface, waiting to consume any invader. A few even believed humans were immortal, capable of surviving anything. None of it was true. But the fear was real. The final mistake. A new generation wants revenge. Years later, deep in the Tharkali Empire, a young, ambitious warlord named Ziltor stood before his generals. He had read the reports. He had studied the failure. And he refused to believe the stories. Earth is not a death world. He growled. The humans are not gods or monsters. They are simply lucky. His second-in-command frowned. But sir, the reports. Ziltor slammed a fist on the table. Lies. Cowardice. Our ancestors fled because they could not adapt. But I? His eyes glowed with ambition. I will return to Earth. I will finish what they could not. Silence. Then one officer hesitantly raised a hand. Sir, there's something you should know. Ziltor narrowed his eyes. Speak. The officer took a deep breath. We recently intercepted a human transmission. It's some kind of entertainment broadcast. Ziltor sneered. Show me. A screen flickered to life. And Ziltor watched in growing horror as a human named Bear Grylls drank his own urine on live television. The last line of defense. Human insanity. Ziltor turned pale. His officers shuffled uncomfortably. Finally, someone whispered. Why would he do that? Another officer gulped. Sir, if they do that to themselves, imagine what they do to us. Ziltor stood abruptly. Cancel the invasion. Sir? Ziltor grabbed a bottle of alien liquor and chugged it. Then he looked his officers dead in the eyes. If we go to war with them, it won't be a battle. It'll be a circus. And we will be the clowns. Silence. Then, one by one, the officers nodded in solemn agreement. And just like that, the last Tharkali invasion of Earth never happened. For years, the Tharkali Empire kept their defeat a closely guarded secret. Their archives were wiped, their officers silenced, and any record of Earth's accidental victory was buried so deep that even their own historians weren't sure if it had ever happened. But like all great secrets, the truth was never truly forgotten. And one day it finally slipped out, in the dumbest way possible. A drunken bet that changed galactic history. The Tharkali High Council had gathered for their annual Galactic Leadership Summit, where warlords, diplomats, and rulers from various species met to pretend they weren't constantly trying to kill each other. It was a formal event, filled with high-level negotiations, political posturing, and endless speeches about intergalactic peace. And of course, after all that nonsense was done, there was the after-party. Which meant booze. A lot of booze. By the third hour, half the Senate was drunk. By the fifth hour, they were making terrible bets. And that's when Supreme Warlord Ziltor of the Tharkali Empire made a mistake that would haunt him for the rest of his life. We never lost a war. Ziltor, who had spent the past 20 years pretending that his empire was unstoppable, was now heavily intoxicated and feeling particularly bold. He slammed his fist on the table, knocking over a pitcher of some glowing alien liquor. The Tharkali Empire has never lost a war. He boasted loudly. A Valari ambassador tilted his head. Is that so? Ziltor grinned, drunk on pride and possibly hallucinogenic space whiskey. Of course. We are the strongest warriors in the galaxy. No species has ever defeated us. The Valari ambassador smirked. What about Earth? Silence. The entire room froze. Ziltor, now trapped, realized his mistake instantly. But it was too late. The room was waiting for his response. His mind raced for an excuse. Any excuse. And then, in a stroke of absolute genius, or stupidity depending on perspective, he did the one thing that might save his reputation. He lied his ass off. The fake victory, against Earth. Ziltor straightened his posture, forcing a casual smirk onto his face. Ah yes. Earth. That strange little planet. The room leaned in. Yes, we fought them once, he continued, but it wasn't really a war. More of a military exercise. A Targassi warlord narrowed his eyes. And what happened? Ziltor took another sip of his drink, stalling. Then he nodded confidently. We destroyed them, of course. Silence. Then the room erupted into murmurs. The Valari ambassador frowned. That's strange. Because according to Galactic records, Earth was blacklisted as too dangerous to invade. Ziltor laughed, waving a dismissive hand. Ah yes, a deception. A strategic misdirection. We simply made it appear that way to prevent other empires from interfering with our conquest. More murmurs. A reptilian senator tapped his claws against the table. Then if Earth is no threat, we should be able to send a scouting fleet to confirm this. Ziltor choked on his drink. The Galactic Senate prepares a recon mission. Within minutes, the entire drunken argument had escalated into an official military decision. The Senate agreed that, since Earth was no longer a threat, a small reconnaissance fleet would be dispatched to confirm its status. The moment Ziltor sobered up, he realized he had made a massive mistake. But now if he stopped the fleet from going, it would look suspicious. So he had only one option left. He had to get to Earth first. And cover up whatever insanity was waiting there. Back on Earth, the return of the rednecks. Meanwhile, Earth had completely forgotten about the Tharkali. Life went on as normal. Jerry still worked at the gas station, telling customers about the time some weird lizard fellas tried to take over Wisconsin. Hank had upgraded his Ford F-150 to include a homemade laser cannon he'd built using old tractor parts. The NASA engineers were busy working on a new experimental ship called the Screaming Bald Eagle, which nobody was legally allowed to fly because of what happened last time. Ohio was still Ohio. Then one day the Tharkali returned. And nobody noticed. The stealth mission that went horribly wrong. Ziltor's plan was simple. Land on Earth in disguise. Observe the humans from a distance. Leave before anyone realized he was there. Unfortunately, his ship was immediately spotted by a group of deer hunters. What in tarnation is that? Within minutes, an entire hunting party had surrounded the landing site. Ziltor's team barely had time to activate their cloaking technology before one of the hunters poked the ship with a shotgun. Looks like a UFO, boys. Should we shoot it? The cloaking failed immediately. Ziltor and his soldiers stumbled out of the ship, hands raised. The hunters narrowed their eyes. One of them, an older man with a thick mustache and an American flag bandana, spat out his chewing tobacco. Then he pointed at Ziltor. You ain't that feller who tried to invade us last time, are ya? Ziltor froze. Then he did the only thing he could think of. He ran. The chase that broke the Tharkali Empire. What followed was the most ridiculous high-speed chase in intergalactic history. Ziltor and his team, panicking, fled across the countryside, pursued by ATVs, pickup trucks, a herd of extremely aggressive cows. Hank's newly modified Ford F-150, now with a laser cannon. By the time the Tharkali managed to escape, they were missing half their soldiers, their ship was full of bullet holes, and Ziltor had lost his left boot. The moment they reached orbit, he ordered an immediate retreat. When the fleet returned to the Galactic Senate, Ziltor personally filed a report. His final words? Do not return to Earth. Ever. It is a cursed land of madmen and monsters. Earth was once again marked as too dangerous to conquer. And that was the last time the Tharkali ever tried. Final epilogue, humanity's reaction. Back on Earth, the entire incident barely made the news. One local paper published an article. Florida man chases off alien invaders with pickup truck and homemade laser. Jerry saw the headline and shrugged. Sounds about right. And then he went back to work.